All right, guys, we got a new section to the America Happens website called the Whistleblowers Forum, where you could go on there and anonymously or using your name post anything that you want and contact other whistleblowers to talk about what's really going on out there. All right, welcome to the latest episode of Blood Money. Today we have a very special guest, Ryan Matta. How you doing, sir?
Mr. Miller, it's an honor to be here, sir. I'm stoked.
Awesome. Great to have you on the show. So, crazy enough, when we scheduled this interview for the audience out there, Ryan was like, man, I hope I'm still alive by the time the interview comes around, because he's been doing some dangerous shit, really dangerous shit. And he's going to tell us all about it. So, Ryan, I'm going to pass the mic to you. Tell us, what have you been up to?
Let's start from the beginning on how I got invited to Guatemala by their attorney general. So, uh, this last summer, me and my partner JJ Carroll, well, I shouldn't say my partner, but we partnered in a film called "What Is Treason?" #invaded, where we traveled across the country and we went to the major epicenters of this invasion and we documented it. And we interviewed whistleblowers and we put together this amazing documentary. And then while in the process, we had so much information and intel on child trafficking. And I've been working on this investigation for 2 years before I even started that we were able to craft and put out 2 documentaries. So one of them was on child trafficking. But because we were selling those documentaries and they were behind a paywall, when you talk about child trafficking, people know it's happening or they think they know, but any chance they have to turn a blind eye, they will. And they won't, they choose not to watch it because it's behind a paywall, right? So I wanted to put out, so right after those 2 launched, I realized that it wasn't going to move the needle because there just wasn't enough people seeing it. So I went and spent 25 grand out of my own pocket to go on another mission to create another documentary on child trafficking. So this is when I say child trafficking, I specifically am meaning the government funded USA sponsored child trafficking.
Yeah. Question about the paywall thing. So you're saying that the pre-existing documentaries are behind the paywall, so people were just not hearing about it?
Yes. So the "What Is Treason?" #trafficked and then "What Is Treason?" #invaded are sold only on our website or on Rumble. They're pay-per-view, and for $9.99 you get both documentaries. So that was, I could just tell, like when I talk about this child trafficking, I've been doing it for 2 years. I understand what moves the needle, right? And I understand when certain stories go viral or other people that have been working on investigations into the same thing make a documentary and it gets a ton of views. There's this outrage and this massive disgruntled citizens that are calling politicians and are pissed because that's what I've realized. The only thing our politicians respond to is being humiliated publicly. When a crisis or something happens, and even their friends at their dinner tables that they go out to the country club with are like, "Yo, bro, you're allowing children to be trafficked. What's going on here?" Right? When you make them so popular and you make it so known to the masses that they can't hide and they can't rub shoulders with everybody, that's what upsets them the most. And that's what gets their attention. So we know that our government has trafficked in 438,573 unaccompanied alien children. That is since the Biden administration has taken office. 438,573 unaccompanied migrant children as of July 1st have arrived at our border without a parent. And our government has taken possession of those child. When a child comes to the border unaccompanied and they cross over that border, they are now property of the United States government. So let's kind of set the stage here, right? So in the documentary I did with JJ, we also talked about adrenochroming. We talked about organ harvesting, and I brought in whistleblowers who actually go in, not whistleblowers, but patriots who actually go and kick down doors and rescue these children that are being trafficked. This non-governmental organization called ARC does just that. They rescue children that they get actionable intel and they can find, and they go and save these children. They've saved 1,500 and they've never lost one. So we break all that down in the treason series of documentaries. But I realized that as well was kind of like, it's so far outside of the average American's Overton window that they can't process it, or they just are I know it's happening, I don't want to hear about it. We talk about literally, terrifying, torturing children and draining their blood so that elite celebrities can drink it. I mean, adrenochrome is the highest and most valuable drug in the world, ounce per ounce. So it's a huge market for it, surprisingly. And then you also go into organ harvesting, which is another rabbit hole. But the second film that I produced for free, this one specifically focuses on this quasi public-private partnership that DHS and Alejandro Mayorkas have created with the Mexican cartels and the public-private partnership that HHS has created with these non-governmental organizations, along with ORR, which is the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Together, they have turned America. They've created this system and machine that is literally a funnel for child trafficking. And it's designed to move massive amounts of bodies. It's not designed to keep these children safe. It's designed with maximum plausible deniability and zero accountability. So if I ask your audience and I tell everybody this, like, you've never seen the Mexican cartels taking a package of fentanyl or packages after packages of fentanyl and just tossing them over a border wall into the most heavily guarded and secured night vision cameras, ground sensors, and heavily patrolled area of the border. And they would never do that because they were never going to hand over, they're never going to do all this work to traffic drugs through Mexico and then get them to the border and just hand them over to Border Patrol, because they're going to seize their package and the merchandise is never going to get to its final destination, which is a buyer in America. What we've created here with this system that we have going on now is that the cartels no longer have to smuggle children across the border. They just have to deliver them to Border Patrol agents, because the way the system works is that right now we're seeing, if your audience wants to fact check this, they can just go on YouTube and they can search cartel drops child over border wall. And you'll find video after video, probably 50 of them, unless YouTube scrubbed them. But what you'll see is you'll see a Border Patrol agent reaching over the wall, like, or not a Border Patrol agent, a cartel with a child reaching over the border wall, an 18-foot border wall, like he's at a frat party and he's going to drop a beer down to his buddy on the next level. And he leans forward as far as his arms can reach with the child just dangling in the air. And they just drop the child, and the child free fall 14 feet, 18 feet, 12 feet down and just smash into the dirt. And then a few minutes later, you'll see a Border Patrol agent pull up and pick up the child. Now, what these cartel members are doing is they're branding these children like cattle. So the child will have a.
Sorry to interrupt you, because I saw James O'Keefe's film Line in the Sand. I mean, you would be shocked at the cold-hearted transactional nature of it all, and how many people are complicit in all of this because they're getting paid. I mean, that's the thing that is really shocking. Like, you're talking about our own government facilitating the selling of slaves, basically.
Nailed it. Spot on, man. And when you talk about child and trafficking, right, there's two really dangerous parts of the journey for the child trafficker. The first or second most dangerous part is delivering the merchandise across the border, taking the merchandise across the border. The first most dangerous is delivering the merchandise to a buyer in America. The system that they've created, our government is now taking over the two most dangerous legs of the child trafficking operation for the cartels. And the cartels are still getting paid full stop. All they have to do now is brand the child. They have to put a name, a number, and an address, and they safety pin it to this child's shirt. And now, so your audience understands, 80% of the children that are coming across that border are openly admitting to being sexually raped or assaulted on their way to America. Most of these children have been living through hell for months before they make it to the border. Raped, beaten, assaulted, treated like a sex doll, and abused by these cartels and these human traffickers. So when they come across that border and they're picked up by Border Patrol, Border Patrol only has one kind of mission, and that is food, clothing, and medical, right? So they just go, are you okay? Are you safe? Do you need anything to eat? They give them the basic necessities, and they do an initial intake where they say, what's your name? Where are you from? Who is this? And the kid's coached and told, you say that this is your father. You say that this is your uncle. You say that this is your older brother, right? Whatever the relationship that they concoct, that child is 100% going to tell that to that Border Patrol agent. Now, the Border Patrol agent, knowing this, takes this number and puts it into the child's file as his sponsor. From there, the child's transported over to HHS intake facility where he can stay for 2 to 14 days. The HHS, Health and Human Services, are supposed to do an initial intake screening on these children. They do this screening, and then they also are trying to vet the sponsor. So vetting the sponsor is a process where they contact the phone number that was stapled at the kid's shirt, and they say, hey, Vem, were you expecting a kid? And you go, yeah, I am. They go, okay, what's his name and birthday? That's all you have to have. Once you give them the name and birth date of the child, they are going to begin the vetting process. So they send you an application, which is like a job application, just ask for basic intel. And then they want you to send them an ID. So what I'm holding in my hand here is a fake ID that I bought in New York City off an illegal immigrant for $100. And it took me 15 minutes to find some random person in New York City selling IDs. And then it took me 45 minutes to pre-order this ID. Had to go to the restaurant and wait. And then 45 minutes later, you get a call, your ID is ready, and you go pick up your ID, right? So with this fake ID, and if I paid the cartel to deliver a child to the border, all they have to do is safety pin this number on the child's shirt, and then I can apply to get that child. So then they asked me to send in this ID, and this is all done via WhatsApp, not a government database, not any sophisticated form of communication or encrypted. They're doing this with employees at HHS that have never had any training in document IDs and none of the sort, right? They don't even have a book like a bartender. Every bar in America you walk into, that bartender has the 2024, the 2025 edition of all government IDs, and there's a list for every state, and there's 20 different fake IDs. And you literally look at the ID. Okay, this ID was created or issued on 11/14/2022. I would go over to the book. I'd verify in a 2022 New York State ID. What am I looking at, right? And there would be a list of all the fakes and like highlights on how to determine if it's fake or not. They get none of this. They don't even ask to verify if they're a real ID or not. So then they're using Google Earth to take a look at the address because we got to make sure the kid's going to a safe home, right? So they literally are getting on Google Earth and spinning around and turning and going, oh yeah, it looks like a house. It looks like a good place for a kitty. I will authorize the delivery of the child. So that's kind of the process of how they're vetting these sponsors. So anybody with a fake ID can basically have a child delivered to their house in 14 days, little as 14 days. So from there, our government has delivered 323,000 children to grown men and adults in America that they've vetted, right? They've vetted these people and they've authorized the delivery of these children to a grown man or a grown woman in America. And they've tried to make a contact again after the child's delivered. They're supposed to make one phone call in the first 30 days to just check on the kid. They call you and say, Vem, how's Johnny? And you go, Johnny, oh, you mean the kid that oh yeah, I answered a Facebook ad and this guy said he'd pay me $50 or $500 to go pick his son up from the airport and drop him off. I haven't seen the kid since I dropped him off. You're like, wait, what? Or you don't answer. And if you don't answer, that's considered a lost child. If you answer and you go, oh, Johnny, yeah, Johnny's great. They go, okay, thanks. That's considered found. So our government has openly admitted to losing 323,000 of these children. They have no idea where they're at. And out of that, the whole crazy picture here, so it's get really crazy when you start doing the numbers. Where are these children from, right? So out of that 438,000, and that was as of July, it's probably upwards of 500,000 now, if not higher. 42 to 48% have came from Guatemala. One country the size of New Jersey with 15 or 18 million citizens in Guatemala, 212,942 children in the last 4 years have been kidnapped, trafficked out of Guatemala, arrived at the US border without a parent. And our government probably can't find at least 75% of those children. So this is kind of the pretext of what got me invited to Guatemala, but I'll land it there and then you can kind of jump in if you have some questions.
I mean, this is the most depressing question based upon your conversations with people and, knowledge of what's going on out there. I mean, what is really happening to these children? I mean, are we talking about they're being chopped up and used for adrenochrome? I mean, what is really going on once, 323,000 children are lost?
I don't think most of us or anybody has a really idea, but I can give you a general statistics based off of like normal child trafficking operations. So you would assume that 63% roughly are being sold for sex. Then you go, I think it's 35%. No, sorry, I messed it up. I think it's 36% are being sold for sex. I think it's the 60 something percent are being labor trafficked. And then it's like 8% are being adrenochromed. And then 4 or 5% are being organ harvested. And then there's a small percentage that are actually being ritually sacrificed in satanic churches and satanic cults, as crazy as that sounds. We've actually interviewed a gentleman who rescued a female. I think by the time that she got rescued, she was 22. And her grandfather was a satanic cult leader. And at the church that she was at, in her grandfather's basement, she personally sacrificed children for her grandfather. And then she was also raped by her grandfather and a ton of people that her grandfather was friends with. So to give your audience an idea, another statistic which is horrific is the fact that the average life expectancy of a trafficked child goes from, what is the average life, 72 years to 24 to 36 months after that child is delivered to a buyer in America. That becomes the life expectancy because what's being done to these children is so egregious, it would make you vomit. We're talking stories about, I think the girl was 12 years old and she was chained in a basement, in a gentleman's basement for 2 years. And every night that man came down there and he threw her plate on the food on the floor and he savagely raped her. And then after he was done raping her, he would put a cigarette butt out on her arm. So that way, if she ever escaped, and she every time she looked down at her arm, she would have a constant reminder of how this man savagely raped her. And then when he wasn't raping her during the day, he would let 7 to 10 men on average come in the home and rape her. So this girl was raped 10 to 20 times, maybe even 11 times a day, for almost 2 years straight, while by being chained into a basement, pissing and shitting in a bucket, and eating her food off the floor. And that was just one child. There's stories about, we could talk about the damage that's being done to a 5-year-old, you know, girl or boy. Their bodies are not designed to take objects that large into such small areas. So they are actually just destroyed. And then some people might go, oh, well, what about the 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds? Well, for the 5 years old, there's no pleasure in that. They are excruciating. I mean, Tim Ballard will tell you stories that he interviewed this trafficker that used to freeze Vaseline popsicles and give them to the children. And then one of the traffickers was bragging about, I forget what they call it, it's like an appendectomy or whatever it is. Basically, they would have a doctor on site that would stitch the children up and they would give them medication and drugs and they would be back out on the street getting pimped out in a week. That's right. These people are so sick and evil that they're willing to allow a child to be brutally raped to the point where it shreds their body. And they bring in a doctor or a quasi nurse that can stitch these children up so that their bodies can heal in a short period of time while they give them Vaseline popsicles they freeze Vaseline popsicles and they allow these children to stick that inside themselves to help heal these cuts so they can put them back out on the street and pimp them out more often.
Oh my God, man. I mean, and this is something that like our government higher ups don't know this is happening. I mean, and if they know this is happening, I mean, how could you arrive to the conclusion that everybody's just not like completely evil and allowing it to happen?
They are beyond. I'm looking it up right now so I can give you an accurate information. But the Department of Justice, right, has a lawsuit right now. So the Justice Department sues Southwest Key Programs for sexual abuse and harassment of children in their shelters. So these are the largest NGO that traffics children in America is a company and corporation called Southwest Key Programs. Southwest Key Programs is literally being sued by our Justice Department for the role that they've allowed or for the fact that they've allowed children to be raped inside their facilities. And if you were just to read just the crimes that they're talking about, that they're actually arresting and charging all of these different employees that worked at these NGOs, it would take us 15 minutes just to go one by one by one and just read just the charge. Employee at Southwest Key Programs went into child's bedroom at roughly 4 a.m. and touched the child's private parts inappropriately. Next one is, staff member at a shelter took child into closet and sexually assaulted the child multiple times. Another one is, threatened to kill the child's parents if they talked about how he touched their genitals, bathrooms. It's just a laundry list of charges. And if I read them one by one, it'd probably take me 10 to 15 minutes just to read all those charges.
I mean, what happens to people like that? Do they go to jail forever? Like, what's happening? Because that just sounds like, I mean, for most people that hear that, they're like, all right, death penalty.
That's exactly the only thing that fixes this. So we interviewed several experts in the field, along with my personal doctor, told me the same thing. She specializes in helping traffic victims. These are women in Michigan specifically that have been trafficked and abused. She's like the doctor that, like, when judges are trying to, like, hey, who should she go see for help or counseling or any of these hospitals, like, my doctor specifically is like an expert in that and specializes in that. And she says that when you talk about, you can take three people. You can take a murderer, you can take an arsonist, and you can take a pedophile, right? Studies have proven that, and especially with murder, like even if you're like a serial killer, at a certain age, like you almost grow out of that, and you can basically be rehabilitated to never kill anybody again. That you can cure, I guess, the desire to kill. Now, when you talk about the desire to burn, like maybe you're an arsonist and you get your rocks off on watching houses burn down, that person with the right counseling and the right amount of time in prison can also be cured. A sex offender will repeat offend 100% of the time. It's almost like it's a demonic possession, and that the only solution is the ultimate punishment. Like, I feel like, and I have if you go to thisistreason.com, the website for mine and JJ's treason documentaries, if you go to that website, you can see a call to action. And on that call to action, I'm calling for 10 million signatures. And I want to deliver these 10 million signatures to President Donald Trump in this active petition, which is demanding that they re-implement the death penalty in all 50 states for anybody under the age of or over the age of 21 who rapes a child. I'm not trying to jam up the 19-year-old who's dating a 17-year-old, right? I get that there's that window where I'm not trying to destroy your life if you're a good person, right? Even if you're 22 and the girl's 16 or 18 and she consents to it, I understand that those situations
Like,
happen, right?
you're talking about children. Like, you're talking
I'm talking
about
about
the
children.
audience line that I think we all know exists between, like, I mean, 19 and 17. I mean, I've heard horrible stories with friends that like have forever had that on their record. And if you
Yep.
ask me, that should be nothing. But like you're talking
Agreed.
about like 19 and like 11 or 8 or whatever.
Yeah, or like 49 and 13, right? So like let's just say I could probably update that, would make it even more clear. Like let's just say anybody under the age of 14, right? I think that if you are 14 or younger, right, you are so manipulatable as a child. Now, granted, I moved out of my house when I was 13. So maybe we say it's 13, right? That seems to be the age because I was out there on my own working 2 jobs, like living an adult as an adult at 13. So, but I still don't think I should have been able to consent to have sex with an adult. But either way, let's just say we're calling for the death penalty, and then I'm also calling for uh, to change the process on how these appeals work. Right? If there's video and DNA evidence, and I get that there's AI because somebody said, well, with AI, like blah blah blah. No, AI is smart enough to detect when a video is made by AI. Right? So if we if we have video evidence and DNA evidence, that immediately removes your right to all appeals. You don't get to appeal it. You don't get to torture that victim and walk her through the mud for 8 years sometimes. That's how long these cases can go on for, with appeal after appeal after appeal. For 8 years, that woman is tortured relentlessly every single gosh damn day, wondering if you're going to get out of prison or you're going to get sentenced or you're going to go to jail or she's going to have to deal with the appeal process.
I want to
So,
add something. I want to add something in there because I've seen things with this process. I totally agree with what you're saying, by the way. But there was a gentleman that we know named John David Cunningham. To be honest with you, due to the really screwed up way family courts go down and just court corruption, he's in jail for having raped his 6-year-old daughter. And there's zero evidence. And she, in fact, said at first that it never happened, and then she said they basically conned her into saying that it did. So based upon words, you're also finding people. There's got to be hardcore evidence, is what I'm saying. And I like the fact that you mention actual DNA evidence, which in some of these false accusation cases, these are lacking, and really it's dangerous for men out there, for
well,
people in
100%.
the judicial system where you could land yourself in jail forever on false accusations, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sure of it. Yeah. But when there's video evidence and there's DNA evidence combined and it's irrefutable, right? You lose the right to all appeals. It's so simple. And I'm sure there's going to be that 1 in a million, right? But the amount we're going to gosh damn save, because we've had these experts that have gone into these prisons and had the opportunity, which I would love the opportunity. If anybody out there has any access to prisons and can get me in to interview some of these pedophiles, oh my gosh, I would do just about anything, because they will tell you they asked all of them the same question. Is there anything that would have deterred you or prevented you from doing this? And every single one says the same thing. Yeah, the death penalty. I might have, not saying that the guaranteed they would have, but if there was the death penalty, maybe I wouldn't have grabbed that girl. But you know what? Uh, I got 5 years, and you got to pay taxes and work and do all this stuff to keep a roof over your butt head. I'm getting 3 square meals a day, and I'm perfectly happy. I got my rocks off. I got to rape the child. I'm good. I'll be out in 3. Right? We are literally watching migrants come to America, rape American women, and then be just tossed out on the gosh damn streets. So, like, we need such harsh punishment for these scumbags because I could go on and tell you the stories and the horror stories of what's done to these children. And
Yeah.
these people cannot be fixed. They cannot be saved. They must be eliminated. And God was very clear on that, right? When you talk about the Bible, people act like God was a forgiving guy. I don't think so. I think Jesus was the forgiving one. I think God ruled with an iron fist and was very like clear about the wicked, right? If you
And,
so much as touch a
and
hair on one of their heads, you're better off
Jesus,
to have a millstone tied around your neck and cast into the sea. So it's God saying, listen, you hurt one of my children, you best go straight to hell. You tie that millstone around your neck and you toss yourself off a boat or off a cliff or into the sea, because if you see me, you will wish that you were sent to hell, right? I think God was very clear on the wicked. So, but you were saying something. Sorry about that.
no, I'm just saying Jesus too. People that people always recall Jesus in this kind of peaceful light and like almost this like hippie-esque picture. But no, I mean, he went into the temple and started whipping some ass. You know what I mean? It's like he's
Flipping
not.
tables.
Yeah, he could. He he could get and especially with children, I could see Jesus taking out his whip and wanting to stone somebody to death for having done, violated a child. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous we're even talking about this. I mean, how inhumane. I mean, we're pretty much, haven't evolved from the days of child sacrifice, really. I mean, if you think about it, between this and abortion.
It's it. It's the same demonic possession that has possessed these people. And this is where we transition into me releasing this documentary. It goes almost viral overnight. Within 48 hours, it gets 1 million views. And then start getting contacted by so many people that are like, hey, can you get this into Spanish? Can you get this into Spanish? So it took me about 4 or 5 days and I got it translated, the entire documentary. And it actually, this AI that translates it uses my voice, which is
Mhm.
the coolest thing. It takes my voice and it makes me speak Spanish. I was just like, wow, this is freaking awesome.
Oh wow,
Um,
what is that called, by the way?
I don't know. I some guy on Twitter did it for me.
Amazing. That sounds very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, yeah.
So
Wow.
I released it in Spanish, and within 24 hours, I'm contacted by the Attorney General of Guatemala. So the Attorney General of Guatemala wants to know if I'm interested in coming to Guatemala to talk about the child trafficking that's taking place. So I tell them I can't come till January because I'm self-funded. I just spent 25 grand making the documentary. I don't think at that point I got much in donations back.
By the way,
And I
could I ask you a quick technical question? Like,
yeah.
is this you just traveling around by yourself, using like this low budget to like film everything? I mean, how does it work mechanically? Are you out? Who's out there with you?
Oh, I'm a professional videographer. I've been doing this for years. So I
Oh,
fly with about $20,000 worth of gear on me at all times. I bring all my cameras, DSLRs, lights, everything. I have specially designed equipment that's designed to basically be super light or super compactable. So a lot of everything's kind of carbon fiber. And then I assemble everything on set. And I could show up into any, as long as I got a room that's about 10 by 10, I can make it look like a Hollywood studio with my production gear that I have. Sometimes I get screwed, but for the most part, that's how I roll. So from there, we go and I
awesome.
get invited to Guatemala. I say I can't go till January. I hold a Twitter space that night, and about a dozen citizens from Guatemala showed up, and they were begging me to come. And one of them is like, "Listen, Ryan, like we need you here in Guatemala. These children need you." We received 20 Amber Alerts yesterday, and I'm like, "Wait, what?" And they go, "Yeah, 20 children were kidnapped and reported in Guatemala yesterday alone."
So,
And I
so,
go,
so sorry. Let me understand the mechanics of this because I'm trying to. That's another thing I've been trying to figure out. Where is this influx of 300,000 children coming? So you have actual teams out there kidnapping kids that belong to families and then bringing them here for harvesting and rape and all this insane type of stuff.
"Oh yeah, oh
This
yeah."
is kidnapping regular kids off the streets.
Yeah, 20 of them. 20 kids were taken from their family because somebody had to report it, right? And there's also, so if 20 were kidnapped, that probably means 40 to 60 were actually taken and smuggled out of that country, because a lot of these poor villages in Guatemala, where the average employee makes about $1.25 or $1.50 a day, right? It's not uncommon in these villages for the women to have 6 or 10 kids. They can't feed all their children. So when somebody comes up to your village and says, "Hey, we'll give you $3,000 for a child," and that $3,000 can feed your entire family and all the kids for the next 2 or 3 years, you know, are
So
you willing?
sometimes they're selling their kids too. Like it's not just they
Sometimes they're
take
selling.
off the streets.
Yep, and then they also have things like the nanny ruse, right? Or the modeling ruse, where um, somebody dressed fairly sophisticated and fairly nice shows up to these third world villages, and they say, "Hey, we have this amazing opportunity for your daughters. Any daughters that are between the ages of 13 and 16, we can take you to America and get you a job working for this elite nannying service. And the nannying service is going to give your daughter is going to get like $6 an hour, right?" And these families go, like, they literally think their daughter is going to be Elon Musk rich, and then they do this as a lure to get the parents to sign over the rights so that they can travel and take their child across the borders and in through airports or whatever route that they need to, but they have the documentation to back it up. And those are probably, I don't want to say the worst cases, but what they do is they take the girl, and the second that they get her out of this village and in their control and in a secluded area where they are basically alone with this child, they break her. So one man tries to rape her, and if she shows up any resistance or tries to fight whatsoever, two more men can't come in. The two men pin her down, and then all three men savagely gang rape her and beat the shit out of her. And at that point, she's broken, and she knows that she's controlled by the cartels, because they also she also knows that she comes from a village where the cartels control the village, and they tell her that we got cartel members outside your parents' house right now. If you don't work for us or you give us any trouble whatsoever, we're going to go in there and we're going to kill your entire family. So at that point, she's fully broken and fully under the cartel's control, and she will walk herself right into America and turn herself into Border Patrol and get shipped right into the system and not ask a question about it.
Wow. Wow. Most Americans would love for us to go to war with this sort of thing. I mean, if people were like, we've heard all these like people made into boogeymen because of bankers' interests and all that stuff. I mean, since the beginning of time. But I mean, if most Americans heard, Donald Trump said, "Hey, I want to send out, 250,000 soldiers to wipe out this entire scumbag network." I mean, most Americans would be good with that, but what would it take to clean this out realistically? What is it like? What is the goal here? What's feasible?
I think that if you were to take every single person that's in this previous administration and in the next administration, and you put them all in prison, I think that alone, and you made, and after you did that, right? And Trump say gets to handpick as whoever he wants, right? And then at that point, we implement a law that requires every single politician in
You're
the United
saying
States government
every person in the Biden administration.
and the upcoming Trump administration, right? All of them in prison, right? And
Why the
then
upcoming Trump administration?
because you'll understand here in a second. So
Okay.
what I want mandatory polygraph testing done for every single member of Congress. I want them fully interrogated and investigated. And then the ones that are found to be liars and scoundrels, right? They remain in prison until they talk and they tell you everything, right? And if you take out these key players here in America, these are the key players these are the linchpins. Our ambassadors to these countries are literally more powerful than the president of that country. And they use that power to co-opt the government, to stage color revolutions, to build literally armies of natural citizens. And they radicalize these citizens. And then they use those citizens to carry out their bidding as far as regime changing and overthrowing governments. And then they also use these NGOs to infiltrate the media, and they take over the mainstream media in all these countries so that when they carry out the regime change, it goes as planned. And the narrative is their narrative, not the truth. And I say that because that's literally what is happening here in Guatemala right now. So for the last basically like 20 years, our government and the ambassadors to America, specifically Todd Robinson was the ambassador to Guatemala. This is a gay black dude from America. He just actually was put into like this super ambassador program by Biden or by Blinken. And there's only like a handful of like these super ambassadors. I don't know if they think they're going to be career ambassadors, but this dude has investigations into him in Guatemala for raping little boys in Guatemala. So our politicians, these ambassadors, act like dictators in these third world countries, and they use their leverage in the United States to force their government to create literally like like almost like a private police, right? Kind of like how the FBI does the Biden of the bidding of the Biden administration would be like Joe Biden and going and creating another authority branch that has basically more power than the cops and the CIA and the FBI, and then giving that uh, organization or that department the authority to arrest all of your political opponents or anybody that speaks out about you. And then you already control the justice system. So once you use your private police, which the only reason it was created because the United States government put pressure on your government to create it, and then that has the ability to take out anybody that's going to investigate it, you end up having our ambassador with almost like authoritarian control in these third world countries. And that's literally what has happened here in Guatemala. So when I got invited there to talk to their attorney general, I also was able to have access to tons of citizens, whistleblowers that came forward that wanted to talk to me. And through that, I learned that in 2023, they just had an election in 2024. No, sorry, 2023, they had their election. And within 1 hour of the polls closing, because it's same day paper ballots, in person voting, within 24 hours of the election taking place, they received 1,000 complaints of voter fraud. So the way that the Guatemalan government is structured is you have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, and they're three separate branches, and they're all independent of each other. Outside of that, you also have the Attorney General's office, who is independent of all three of those organizations. Well, 8 years ago, our corrupt government installed an Attorney General, and they didn't want the conservative president to have the authority to fire that Attorney General, which at the time he did. So our government puts pressure on their government and forces them to change the law. They force the judicial or the legislative branch to change a law and pass a new law that says that the president doesn't have the authority or power to fire the attorney general. Fast forward 8 years now, we had a good we have a great attorney general in Guatemala, and they just installed and rigged this election. The only person that can investigate that is this attorney general. So after the election fraud, the attorney general, because of the way their government's structured and because of an election, she doesn't have the authority to just open the investigation, right? She can only open investigations where there's evidence presented to her. That's straight across the board. But in elections, she has to go to Congress. So she takes the information that was given to her by the local citizens and people exposing this fraud. She presents it to Congress, and Congress has to review it and vote on it. So 100 out of 160 Congress members, they don't have a Senate, so it's all Congress. Out of the House, 108 of them reviewed that evidence and go, wow, yeah, there's a lot of fraud here. We should investigate this. We choose to vote to investigate the fraud. And that gives the Attorney General the ability to investigate it. At that point in time, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken strips all of the visas for all 108 family members of Congress in Guatemala. Our Anthony Blinken, our State Department, is removing and interfering in elections by stripping away visas that belong to family members. And not just stripping away the visas, he froze all their assets. And then he went a step further and went and found 400 of their friends and family members and froze all of their assets and suspended all their visas. These are some Guatemalans that have been like absolute America first diehard loyalists for the last 20 years or 25 years and have done nothing but been a great ally to the United States. And they're now being punished because they want to investigate the election fraud, which if we had time here to present it, I could present it and prove to your audience in probably 15 minutes how obvious this election fraud was and how they should be immediately demanding for an investigation. Now, from there, the party that this president actually ran with is the Semilla Party, and the Semilla Party was created in 2019. And when it was created, they have a process for creating new, basically, political parties in Guatemala. You have to have 22,100 signatures, and you have to do some other things, right? So, right after that party was created, I think it was actually in 2022, is the first time a whistleblower came forward. There's a gentleman, and he looked at this list of names that were assigned to create this party, and he realized his name was on it. And he's like, what my name? I've never signed that. So he went and reported it to the Attorney General's office. They did a signature analysis, and they seen that obviously that he did not sign that. That was a fraudulent signature. Then they said that gave them the idea to like, well, maybe we should look into some of these other names. They started looking into the list, and I think it was like 2,000 or 3,000 of them were dead. So like before this list was even signed, because you have the name and the date, their death certificate shows that they were dead, long before they ever signed this document. There was another couple thousand duplicates, so they're literally double signatures. Total, I think it was a fraudulent like 8,000 signatures out of the 25,000 they turned in, which means that you need 22,000 to be an official party. So that investigation just ended about a week and a half ago, and they've now completely dissolved that party. And what that means is technically the president is illegitimate. He ran on a party that wasn't legit. He should have never been in there. 23 members of Congress also same associated with this party. This is basically the Semilla party is literally the Communist Party of Guatemala. You can look at it that way. And so what our government is doing is Anthony Blinken in these organizations, Anthony Blinken isn't running them, but the State Department funds organizations like USAID. USAID is supposed to be our aid delivery service for we go into Haiti during earthquakes or these third world countries when natural disasters happen, and we provide them aid because we're the good guy, we're the United States, but really that's not the case. These NGOs like USAID operate as the money laundering arm for the CIA, and they do nothing but funnel money into the woke causes or anything that they want to do, buy off politicians. A congressman in Guatemala, their salary is $1,000 a month. And you're talking about, I hired a private investigator firm to track every penny coming and going from the Biden administration over the last 4 years into Guatemala. And it's $796 million. That's our tax money that have been funneled into USAID. And then USAID has the access. Well, USAID got about 400 million of that, but they were able to use that money. However, there's no oversight. There's nobody coming in questioning. There's never an audit done on USAID. And they use this money to buy off politicians, to buy off media. And then after you've been doing it for 20 years and you've built this corrupt network, you control the media, you control the politicians, you control the rule of law, and you can run that country with an iron fist. And that's what happened. So the attorney general is the only person that has the authority to investigate this. So then USAID basically funds their George Soros, BLM style Antifa riots outside of the attorney general's office. They scheduled a protest that lasted for 180 days where these people sit outside the attorney general's office, thousands of them. And these are people that make $1.50 a day that can barely afford to keep a roof over their kid's head coming from these third world villages. They're not going to stand outside of an attorney general's office for 180 days unless they're gosh damn paid to do so. And that's exactly what they did. They stayed out there. And then this mob of protesters went and raided the attorney general's house and then went and raided the secretary general's house. And their authorities told me they believe that if the attorney general was there or the secretary general was there, that they would have been killed in their beds or in their homes by this vicious, angry, rent-a-riot, Antifa-style, USA-funded mob in Guatemala. So it's literally like our State Department is sending hit squads out to assassinate leaders that they can't control in these third world countries. It's that freaking mind-blowing. And I got letters from their attorney general's office. These are internal documents from the Guatemalan government that showcase the communications or the lack of communications, all of the times that their government has been involved or trying to get answers to the 438,000 or the 200,000 missing Guatemalan children. One was weeks before they raided the foundation, Save the Children. So that election was in 2023. Fast forward to 2024, on January 15th, their president assumes position, his role, right? So after January 15th, Guatemala now has this installed president. Fast forward 4 months to April. And on April 25th, the Attorney General of Guatemala raids the foundation Save the Children. And they raided them because the intel was coming in that they were trafficking children out of Guatemala and into organizations in coordination with other NGOs as well. They're all in on this, and they're running this massive child trafficking operation where they're delivering Guatemalan children to the United States of America. So from there, 2 weeks before this is the crazy part, right? Oh, so after that, right? After they raid that foundation, 10 days later, Blinken's on a flight holding a private special press conference and meeting with the president to talk about how the attorney general is corrupt and she needs to be investigated. Sounds a lot like Joe Biden flying to Ukraine and having a press conference and talking about if the prosecutor's not fired, well, he ain't getting a check. Son of a bitch. A couple days later, he's fired, right? And this time it's Blinken. But why? Why didn't he go down there after the elections? Why did he wait until multiple days after the NGO was raided and then takes a surprise trip. This wasn't a planned trip, right? And then to come to find out, Jill Biden was in 2017 was elected as chair to the foundation Save the Children. So I got some letters here. Let's just read the one to Ken Paxton because this is the one.
So when you say Jill Biden was, so you're saying she's like a mastermind behind it?
I'm saying that you have these corporations that have people on the board of directors, right? I'm saying that for some reason, just a coincidence, I'm sure, that Oprah Winfrey has taken the Disney CEO to an event, to a fundraiser at Save the Children. And I'm sure it's a coincidence that Ghislaine Maxwell in 1985, I can show you another photo where she's associated with Save the Children. She raised a bunch of money and donated $2,000 in 1985. You have Hillary Clinton, who speaks positively about Save the Children, and all these, people that we think traffic children. I'm sure it's just all a coincidence that Jill Biden was put on the chair of that board. But, that'd be a conspiracy theory. But yeah, she did. She sat on the board, right? So,
wow.
Just obviously coincidence that they got raided for trafficking children.
So crazy.
Not like the Bidens had the closest island to Epstein's island or anything.
Yeah, crazy. Wow.
So their government, and they were actually nice about Ken Paxton. The rest of the people that they haven't answered the letters, not so much. But the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, this letter is from April 12th. So this is 2 days before they raid this foundation. At this point in time, our government is fully aware that there are over 85,000 children that are missing. Congress is very well aware. Ken Paxton is very well aware of Texas, right? So why didn't this letter get unanswered? They felt like it was because Ken Paxton was under attack by the Biden administration, and maybe there was something more to that story. But I only got 5 minutes, so I'll speak quick. So it's a pleasure to greet you, and I wish you the success in your daily activities. But by higher instructions, I'm writing you to request, if you consider it appropriate, your immediate attention to a serious situation affecting the Republic of Guatemala. As the public minister, we have received a complaint as a criminal report about a very important and sensitive issue, our beloved children. As you know, deficiencies in security and diplomacy related to the border between the United States and Mexico have resulted in a significant increase in drug trafficking, but also a devastating emergence of human trafficking. In relation to a new complaint that has been filed with this institution, a horrifying pattern of disappearance of children from Guatemala has been brought to our attention, and it has been reported to the public ministry that a complex network involving non-governmental organizations, NGOs, operating within Guatemala who collaborate with specific entities in the state of Texas are implicated in the abuse of Guatemalan children, where they are away from their parents and they do not have someone to protect them. These children, these Guatemalan children have been reportedly placed in shelters and organizations throughout Texas under the guise of providing them with a family environment. Disturbingly, there have been reports and documented situations of sexual abuse in these shelters, which is a huge violation of the rights and dignity of these children. The state of Texas bears much of the responsibility for these lost children who have been transferred to the border and processed migratorily in Texas, apparently fully aware of this situation. Among these non-governmental organizations operating in Guatemala and the state of Texas that may be involved in child trafficking operations, the involvement of Save the Children, Changing the Way We Care, the World Childhood Foundation, Arise, and La Unión del Público is concerning. What could be particularly alarming about these organizations is that some of them receive federal funds from the American taxpayers. I have been informed that other non-governmental organizations operating in Guatemala and Texas could be accomplices to child trafficking, possibly supporting this trafficking and other issues with unaccompanied children and adolescents traveling, but they have proven unsuccessful in protecting Guatemalan children. Now, the public ministry, obligated to protect the human rights and interests of inhabitants of the Republic of Guatemala, will spare no effort and exhaust all necessary efforts to locate and criminally prosecute those responsible for this enormous tragedy. Be assured that the Attorney General and Chief of the Public Ministry of the Republic of Guatemala will zealously execute her legal mandate to eradicate this epidemic of child trafficking and to hold those who commit these crimes against humanity accountable. I respectfully request that you contact us as soon as possible and agree to a joint effort amid resolving this humanitarian crisis for which your country is directly responsible in part. We further ado. I subscribe to the highest expression of my consideration and esteem. Truly yours.
Very, very powerful, yeah. And?
Not a word. That's wow. A government saying, where the fuck are our gosh damn children? You have allowed 212,000 Guatemalan children to be trafficked in your country. And I'm over here telling you that I got parents that are looking for their kidnapped, trafficked child, and you can't tell me where that gosh damn child is? Let's talk. Why are we not collaborating and raiding? Why was Save the Children in Texas not raided the day that that foundation was raided?
So you're saying that a lot of people have to be arrested for this to stop, certainly in the Biden regime, and you're saying now in the new Trump administration.
I'm saying that our government is routed to the gosh damn core. We should not trust a word that any of these scumbags say. And if an FBI agent has to get a polygraph test, why are we not polygraphing these members of Congress? If your intentions are not to put America first and protect the people of this country, and you have allegiance to another nation, or you are owned by a CIA or some type of apparatus on this global operation, we should know it. These politicians work for us. We need to remember that, and we need to force them to act accordingly, or we need to remove them from office. So I'm saying that if we want to fix this, it can be done very easily. But I'm not saying that it's actually going to happen. I'm just saying that like we could end this trafficking operation and take out the cartels and destroy these guys in less than a year. We could completely almost eliminate child trafficking as a whole entirely in a year if everybody got on board and we actually went and arrested the scumbags who did this, prosecuted them quickly, and went after all of their networks. You can follow the money. It's not hard.
I know our time's almost up, but do you think Trump's going to do that?
I'm not too optimistic about it, honestly, my friend. I'm buying property in El Salvador and working on getting citizenship there because I think we're a failing nation. And I don't think that Trump either doesn't understand the severity of this operation, which I find almost impossible to not understand after everything he's went through in his family. But watching the people that he's picking and surrounding himself with has taken all hope I have out. I'm watching an Israel-controlled government that has bought all of our politicians and has that's all. They're willing to do whatever they want. Israel gets away with everything. These politicians operate above the law. They traffic, they rape children. Nobody's held accountable for anything. And if we're not going to hold people accountable for the gosh damn crimes that they commit, no matter what their status is, then you're just going to have a 4-year break and it's going to be right back after it.
Wow. El Salvador, huh?
It's I flew out of Guatemala. I wouldn't even fly back to the United States with this information. I flew into Guatemala, or I flew into El Salvador so I could break the stories in El Salvador and get all of the information out to where it needed to go by the time I got back here. So before I came back here. So yeah.
Wow. Amazing, Ryan. I really appreciate you coming on to the Blood Money podcast, man. Is there any social media, websites, anything you'd like to drop before we wrap up this episode?
Just on X at Ryan Matta Media, on Rumble at Ryan Matta, and then my website, which is getting built right now, will be ryanmatta.pro.
Awesome. Thank you so much, viewers, for joining us for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you all on the next episode of Blood Money. Take care.